Welcome to panel, The Shrinking of Civic Space, Challenges, Risks, and the Way Forward. Before we begin, of course, this panel cannot happen without our distinguished panelists, which I invite now to join me on the panel. Rebekka Blomqvist, I thought I will say it correctly this time, Mohammed, Hafez, Jan, Bazyl, and Carlotta, Besozzi. Yeah.
Like the Civic space.
Yes.
Nice
Yeah,
fun.
shrinking space.
That's well.
That's why.
Well thought. Yeah.
I'm particularly pleased that we have us today representatives from this partnership. And the aim of the project is shaping EU policies and partnerships with strong focus on democratic participation, inclusive decision-making, and the protection and expansion of the civic space. Because, though, across Europe and the Euro-Mediterranean region, we are witnessing a concerning trend, a gradual but tangible shrinking of civic space, and this is reflecting in increasing restrictions in civil society, financial and regulatory pressures, declining public trust, and increasingly a shift towards security and conflict-driven agendas that risk and sidelining civic participation. At the same time, key processes such as the upcoming multi-annual financial framework and the new initiatives like the Agora EU program will play a critical role in shaping the future of civic engagement. So our objective today to the panel, with the participation of you, is to understand the current challenges, second, to identify responses and good practices, and to explore what needs to be done as civil society organizations and other stakeholders to ensure that civic space is not only protected, but strengthened. Because democracy depends on participation, then the shrinking of civic space is not just a civil society issue, it's a challenge of democracy itself. To structure our conversation, we will move through two main rounds of discussion, and then we will have a round of discussion with the participants. I encourage, of course, the dialogue, and please feel free to react to anything that you want to add to the speaker's topic. So I will start with Rebekka from Global Fokus. And what are the most pressing trends contributing to the shrinking of civic space today? And I read a report recently from CONCORD, actually, that 17 EU countries have cut their official development assistance in 2025, which is the biggest aid cut we had in a decade. And of course, if you can also expand, how can civil society organizations strengthen their legitimacy and public trust in this context?
Yes, thank you. This is on. I see nodding. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation and for organizing this conference. We are very excited to be here, both as Global Focus, as a partner in this project, UPP project, but also as a participant. So I just wanted to say thank you, first of all. I think where to begin on shrinking civil society space, and luckily I'm not the only one who will be talking about this. But I think from a global focus perspective, and we are a Danish national platform for civil society organizations that work abroad on global issues. So that's the perspective I will take on this. And you mentioned ODA, of course, and I think we will see both on a global level that civil society space is shrinking, but also mostly in all national levels that we zoom in on that this is happening. And I think most of us are aware of the Civicus monitor report, and the recent one from 2025 showed that only 3.4% of the world's population live in open societies where civil society is free of any pressure. And so this means that where most places where we look in the world, this is a real issue that we have to face and talk about and navigate in. And I think coming from Denmark and from the world of development cooperation, what we see is, of course, that when funding is shrinking, as we just got the OECD DAC numbers last week, I think it was, or 2-3 weeks ago, 23% of funding to ODA has been cut in 2025, and of course this also hits civil society. And that means that when funding disappears, it is also harder for civil society to engage and to flourish and to go out and do projects and be part of this interconnectedness in the world. But of course, funding is one part. We are also talking about the rights, the association of freedom of speech, and the third one, that association, speech, and assembly. Thank you. Yes. And this is, of course, where the real issue is when the rights are shrinking, and this is something we need to look at. So I think that's some of the issues that we are seeing from a global perspective, and we're seeing it at the EU level, we are seeing it in the UN, where is there space for civil society to engage, and especially also when the global context is getting more, I was almost going to say crazy, but at least very tumult.
You can say that, it's okay.
And the room for civil society to engage is also affected by that, I think we are seeing.
Thank you very much. So yes, we heard about the areas that we face today in terms of shrinking of the civic space. And now I move forward to Mohammed Hafez from Anna Lindh Foundation. And turning to the Euro-Mediterranean region, we're seeing a shift in political and public priorities. Of course, we all face the consequences, and especially the people that live in the region of war. And we see that there's a shift of the agenda. From the civic participation, we move towards security and conflict-related agendas. How is this shift affecting civic space, particularly for organizations that work for dialogue, intercultural relations, and social inclusion?
Thank you very much, Nadia, for this very relevant question. And of course, thank you, CARDET, and all the organization behind this great conference, which I see a very solid action toward this priority that we are now tackling, which is the shrinking of civic space. I would reply to your question that the situation or the elements that you have mentioned are squeezing the whole ecosystem, as you can see. And this is for many elements. Obvious one, which is the deviation of the political attention from such priorities. So now a priority like dialogue or youth empowerment do not stand a chance receiving resources. And when I say resources, I mean the financial and the non-financial resources, because even the capacities are not, who can make the change, are not fully devoted to do what they usually do. And it is obvious that this kind of situation, this kind of ecosystem trigger what I can say about a security-driven environment. And when you have a security-driven environment, you have implications on the national level and on the regional level. National level, obviously, more administrative barriers, more constraints on the cross-border cooperation, and I mean, even receiving international support or international fund is restricted And you have no idea, I mean, because it also varies when you are talking from the point of view of the southern Euro-Mediterranean region. And on the national level, which I see is more critical, is the doing what you should be doing as a civic actor through having a connection with communities. It is getting hard to have connection, direct communication, direct connection with the communities where you should be tailoring your work for. And due to this strict environment, this role is getting harder. And that obviously leads to, and I'm sorry to say that, a mistrust in the local communities on what the civic actors, now I'm not talking about the local authorities, but even the civic actors' role, and if they are really doing or having an impact on the communal level, tailoring the community-based action that should shape the whole decision-making process, or at least from my own perspective. And the last, and I'm going to conclude by that, and the last element that I see from my point of view is really very critical, that civic actors are now trying to introduce a survival strategy. Moving from the role, the transformative dialogue that they should be playing, toward a more safer and more adaptable narrative that should be accepted on the level of the national level. And that will affect the organizational identity and the sense of ownership, missing the whole fabric of the civil society. But I don't want to be very dark, because, and of course, all of us, we can list many elements, but those, at least from my point of view, coming from a network of civil society networks, proudly represented here in the audience, can see from the hands-on operation of these civil society networks. Thank you very much, Nadia.
Yes, thank you. I think we all agree that the Euro-Mediterranean region at the moment is very critical, and we see that resemble in the civic space as well. But I will move to Central and Eastern Europe, and especially to Jan, that it's a year that you had the presidency now, almost. What are the key barriers civil society organizations face today in engaging with public institutions? I also read that you also face an increased bureaucratic burden as a result of the rule of law, sometimes the government directives. So what are the constraints affecting the civic participation in practice?
Yeah, thank you. Difficult question, obviously. First of all, thank you for CARDET for inviting, and thanks for you being here and the hospitality. And it was great. It is still great to run with the project with you, and of course Global Fokus and CONCORD. Okay, so maybe a bit of about my perspective. Yes. I sort of, as Rebekka, represent a platform, Polish platform of civil society organizations working in development cooperation. So we are not a broad platform of civil society organizations as such, but in a very, very specific area. But obviously our problems, our challenges are also the challenges of the broad Polish or regional civil society. So that's probably important. I would like to start with kind of noting of the shrinking space concept, because it does not mean the same for everyone. So basically, you kind of started to hear this notion when something bad happened politically in the, let's say, Western Europe, US, and so on. But for Polish organizations or organizations from Central Europe, this kind of shrunk space was always there. So that's kind of a very important, because we don't want to go to the narrative, or I don't know, France, Germany, and those countries that have more developed civil society. So when we kind of face the discussion about shrinking space, we were always in the shrunk space in terms of funding, institutional capacity, and so on and so on. So this is something really important. Now, obviously, the situation is a bit different, because the politics that existed, for example, regionally, with the kind of not very positive towards the civil society, kind of went also to the more developed countries that we always thought that either Western Europe, old Europe, for the lack of better term, there's always the civil society was stronger. There were more opportunities after the war to develop in the democratic societies. So they have historically longer period of kind of engagement, civic engagement. So and that's not the case. That's not the case, obviously, in the post-Soviet region of Poland and Central Europe. So we kind of for now we kind of facing facing the same problems as those civil society organizations from old Europe, and this is basically the most important factor for Polish organizations in terms of engaging with public, but generally functioning, is the politics. So the change in narrative, kind of questioning the role of civil society as such, as a important stakeholder for building a healthy society. So this questioning also has to do with funding. The funding is questioned. What those organizations are doing? Are they political? So everything becomes political, and this is a very big problem to concern. So because I don't want to talk too much, but this is kind of the most important point, and kind of one solution. It's not a solution, but a kind of way to go. Citizenship education. I know that we will be talking about this further, but when we think internally about any kind of change of the kind of changing the narrative, which is also now visible in the European Parliament more and more, which is very, very dangerous from our perspective. The pressure on civil society. So the idea would be rather to think more and emphasize more the global citizenship education and citizenship education as such. Sort of to talk to the next generation, because they are choosing our representatives as decision makers. So that would be one point. The other point about the funding. I mean, it's like every discussion about the condition of civil society starts and ends with the funding. So it's probably nothing new is said here, but generally it's still the case. We in Poland, after 1990, when kind of Poland became democratic, it's also obviously the case of the whole region, thought that in 10, 15, 20 years we'll be able to kind of be closer to the Western civil society. It kind of didn't happen. So there is a lot of engagement, but it's still, I guess, that this is not the state that we kind of believe that we will be in when we thought about it 20, 30 years ago. So it's a kind of a sad conclusion, but this is the case. So sorry, it's a very general remarks, but just to give you kind of idea of our thinking, and then again the last point, because as I'm sort of asked here to talk about the whole civil society in Poland in region. I myself specialize in the development cooperation. So basically the problem with the humanitarian aid, development aid in Poland and in our region is still that it's a very niche topic for the decision makers, for politicians. So basically if we talk about civil society engagement in Poland, the politicians, but probably everywhere, tend to think about internal engagement of civil society. But it's hugely important also to think about this external, because the external also influences the internal. With all the what
Carolina.
this is something that I have to add probably in Greek. So so just to finish finish up on that as Rebekka was saying, ODA is crashing down official development assistance. We still have to be able to help and support partner countries to be able to make the situation healthy in our own communities and countries. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jan. I will come back to this and taking that it's the shrinking space is happening to civil society in European countries, but especially we see the numbers cut when we discuss about international development. So I understand that it's even more difficult to discuss about shrinking of space when we are talking about international development. So we will come back to this. And now to Carlotta. Carlotta, thanks for joining us from Civil Society Europe. I know that you are working a lot as Civil Society Europe for the European perspective and bringing the discussion of the shrinking of space at the EU level. So what are the main regulatory financial pressures contributing to the shrinking of civic space, and how are these reflected in EU legislation, current and upcoming?
Okay. Good luck. Thank you. It's difficult to answer in a few minutes. I think, of course, as was already said by other speakers, everything is really interconnected. All the levels are interconnected, and indeed, at EU level, we are experiencing a number of problems in terms of what was already said, in terms of recognition of civil society organizations, which are not seen anymore somehow as an important actor, as playing a sort of intermediary role between citizens and institutions. And this is really challenged in a lot of areas, and there are also a number of narratives that come, exactly as was said by Jan, questioning their legitimacy, their representativeness, their transparency. So there are also, regulatory and policy measures that somehow question that in a context where, for example, we talk now a lot about lobbying and due lobbying of organization, while, for example, the lobbying of corporation is not really questioned. So we have this difficult situation. Also, the situation where somehow in a context where the security context that was mentioned before, also economical issues, somehow civil society doesn't bring so much economic output. That's the narrative. It's not necessarily the reality, but that's the narrative. And paradoxically, things even like a social economy are a bit abandoned. So, for example, at EU level, we had a whole policy on social economy, which is now being strongly downsized. The big also shift that we had was with the elections at the European Parliament. So now there are a lot of, because of the results of the votes, we have political forces which are really extremist parties, mostly from the far right, but that gain legitimacy because they now have their strong political groups and so on. And so somehow what they produce
is legitimizing the system, and that's really, really problematic. I would also say that there are a lot of disinformation that develops. There are also, you know, organized media and movements that come, that were funded by some, not only from outside the EU, but also within the EU. For example, from Hungary, we had the situation of think tanks like MCC or others and so on. Yes, Corvinus and so on, who are also, who received a lot of money, including from US and so on, and that they are using also this funding to contribute to this delegitimization of civil society. And so we had, for instance, even now in the European Parliament, we have a scrutiny working group looking at the funding to civil society, and this has an impact also on discussions that we have on the future funding. So they are trying to say, you know, organizations that are doing advocacy should not be funded anymore, and so on. And this is, and also we have a shift of majorities which sometimes somehow conservative groups which were not adverse to civil society but are aligning in the votes, or part of them, some of these national delegation. And we had this scandal that maybe you know about this WhatsApp group in Germany where you had members of the EPP Germany and also French, which were exchanging messages and strategies with the German far right. To conclude, I would also say that we have also the situation of legislation that is being discussed or has been developed, which is putting strain on civil society. One is around the anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism. This is particularly also relevant for organizations which are active outside the EU, but not only, also in the EU, because of the policies as a result that the so-called de-risking policies of banks, which have an adverse impact on many organizations who see also their sometimes accounts closed or things like that. And then also, for example, it's still in the making. We hope that it will not come into light, but there is also this legislation which is sort of EU foreign funding law, which was not meant so much with that purpose, but has a strong risk of a stigmatization of organizations who receive funding from outside the EU. So also this issue of cross-border cooperation and so on, who is being really challenged.
Thank you very much. This brings us a very comprehensive picture across level. Thank you very much, Minister, for joining us. We will share our report with you because there are some things that are related to your ministry. Thank you very much again. So yes, let us now turn to some good examples, responses, and solutions. And not only at the civil society level, but we heard a lot of examples, of course, at the political, but also at the social and the media environment. So let's start with Jan this time, if it's okay. What practical strategies have proven effective in maintaining civic engagement for international development under increasingly constrained conditions, especially if you have any examples that you would like to share about during the Polish presidency?
This is more difficult question than the previous one. So yeah, I thought about it, but it's like this kind of pessimistic times now that it's really hard to come up with the answer. But I came with one, and this is kind of relates to the relates to the presence, and so basically again, Polish example, obviously, Poland became, in the last 20, 30 years, very wealthy economically, like relatively, obviously. So there's more and more chances to kind of diversify funding for civil society organizations from public funding to the private funding. So basically, more and more organizations are, when strategizing about this, they tend to look at the individual donors and the private sector, because this is really the only chance maybe for them to get some stability in this respect. And we see some reaction from the other side, so from private companies. You know, the times are changing. New generations are coming, creating their own companies. They have a bit different view of the world. They are a bit more open than previous generations. So this is something that, for sure, Polish civil society organizations are looking into it. So that would be probably one important notion. The other,
anything related to what you just said, especially about how easy it is to persuade a private sector company to devote time and resources in the context of international development, not for developing a local. Because in Cyprus, for example, we have private funding, but it's more for social welfare, local social welfare.
Yeah, and that's okay. So because it's really about values. So you shouldn't use the transactional language when you talk with the private company, because you're a civil society organization that's based on values. So you just tell what it is. And this is really, you would be surprised, because, I mean, we shouldn't think about people who run private companies as, people who just, think about the money only. Just if you use you should stick to your language. You have to be honest to yourself. It doesn't make sense from my perspective to convince them to fund your organization because they will kind of have some profit on this. So this is this is something that I believe is important, and we see reaction from the other side. So that's one thing, because the other, just to stick to a bit positive kind of approach, we see new generations coming to civil society in Poland based on the recent things that happen in Ukraine. What happened in the Polish-Belarusian border on migration. So obviously, when you look at the whole of the society, there is still a lot of negativity on those issues, even on helping Ukrainian refugees and migrants. But we see new people kind of coming to the civil society engagement, and we kind of have some hope. We have to have some hope on that. So that would be the second thing apart from the private sector diversification of funding. Thank you.
Thank you as well. So, going to Mohammed. Mohammed, in the context of shaping instability and polarization, what work for a network of organizations in practice to sustain dialogue and cooperation in these difficult times?
Okay. So the first question was the darker, but was the more easier with the answer. But here, first of all, let me insist of that in these times, and now we are living, you said crazy, I would even say surreal, this situation, those moments that we are living, and that makes a need of being part of a regional network not only relevant but essential. Because it is the role of regional networks to maintain this dialogue. A very simple, clear example. When you are part of network, it is much, much easier to advocate, to amplify your concerns and your needs, which is something that you cannot do solely. So it is always beneficial, and is always important to be part of a regional network. And as a responsibility that regional networks should be undertaken, and this is what we in the Lindh Foundation are undertaken, is to try create a community of practice where exchange of knowledge, exchange of best practices can be a good start to an innovation to face or to combat the elements that are causing this shrink of civic space that we have tackled. I would say also that when you are part of a network, you will find more opportunities to strengthen your resilience and to take a courageous and brave role of being part of a dialogue, which is, although I know that there are a lot of polarization, a lot of conflict, but believe me, and this is something that we are witnessing in the Lindh Foundation, we have networks of civil society organizations that are operating in Palestine and those who are operating in Israel. And although it is really tense, the situation right now, but dialogue can easily bring these parties to a sane people-to-people communication. I would say, I would conclude with that the role of a regional network is not only to create a space for dialogue, but to protect this space, to keep on doing what they should be doing, to find innovative solutions to maintain and sustain this space. And this is something that we are currently trying to embed and trying to defend. And I'm a believer. I know that all of you are believers, and it is working. So international cooperation in the framework. We do not now have a network in Poland, so we are looking forward to have a network in Poland and to see how collectively what can be done. Thank you very much.
Carlotta, we have heard about networking and some new opportunities, but given this challenge that you discussed before, and I know that you are working a lot recently about raising the voice, what has been proven effective in ensuring that civil society voices are meaningful and reflected at the European Parliament and at the European Commission and at the Council? It's only some kilometers away now. The head of states are meeting in Cyprus now in about a couple of hours.
Yes, I think I agree with Mohammed that, first of all, it's really important for civil society organizations to work together. I think that's, I mean, our organization is really trying to do that, at least not only at EU level, but also to try to have also bring this dynamic in cooperation with our members and others at national level. But this is the first point, also because that way somehow you can also, you are not as an individual organization always on the forefront. You have others who can help you as well and who can speak for you. So, and then often, you know, you can achieve something better. So this is, so as concrete examples, for instance, I think a key thing was also as an opportunity was the civil society strategy, which is something that has been achieved also thanks from calls from many organizations at national level, particularly initially from Hungary, Poland, and so on, but that we took really collectively as a key ask, and which is now is there. We'll see what it will produce, but at least is a tool that recognizes that civil society are important for democracy, that they have a role in policy making, that they that there is an issue for protecting civil society and human rights defenders, and support, financial support must be there for civil society. So, and also principles for dialogue. Another important point is, of course, we are in the midst of a discussion for the next multi-annual funding at EU level. So it's really to work together to ensure that civil society is funded, first of all, throughout different programs, including as regards Global Europe, but also that there are tools in the funding that allow civil society to participate in shaping the funding priorities. So the whole issue about, for example, the partnership principle that has to be further reinforced and implemented, but also ensuring this dialogue in the individual programs, for instance, that is really key, but also having some specific, somehow where possible, earmarking of funds that allow the funding for civil society to be protected. We have seen also that we had this, a key example that happened was with the funding with health organizations, which was dismissed, and in which they are still, I mean, there is still a fight going on. Also, the ombudsman highlighted how this was not correct, and the parts, of course, of the European Parliament are also active. So this is a key area. Another thing that I would like to speak is also trying, in the context of this difficult parliament, is trying to rally friendly MEPs from across the different parties. So we were to have this interest group on civil society at the European Parliament, who produce also a manifesto which is supportive for civil society, and which allow us not only to engage in dialogue with them, but also to facilitate a dialogue among them, because surprisingly we realize that many MEPs do not know each other if they work in different committees, and so that having this common agenda to support civil society is useful. So these are different things that can be done. Also, we are trying to develop now with the different funding, also the webinars with engaging national civil society, so that they also work together at national level to support this agenda on the funding, and also having positive campaign about the role of civil society.
Yes, maybe later on we can share with participants the upcoming webinars, even if it's not for Cyprus, because I know it was done for Cyprus. Maybe the upcoming ones, maybe some people want to attend. So before closing, and I know that sometimes we look at the Nordic experience as an ideal to be transferred in other countries, but this is not the case in terms of like transferring models, but what insight or practices can be useful for Europe as a general, more broadly, and what we should be cautious on experience for examples that could help civil society organizations to go through this difficult time, and especially if you have any experience with the Danish presidency.
Yes, thank you so much. of course, the Civic Monitor that I mentioned before, Denmark is one of the few countries that are open, and that is, I would almost say, a privilege, but it shouldn't be a privilege. That should be the standard, right? But moving on and getting to your question, what can we learn? I think reflecting on this, going back and looking at civil society in Denmark, I think we have been problem solvers. So we have gone where the state couldn't go. So where the state couldn't reach the populations and there were social issues or rights issues. And this is where civil society went and helped, were a collaborator on these issues. And this, of course, led to funding because the state agreed that there were issues here that needed to be solved. It also led to civil society as being seen as experts in some fields and therefore a relevant policy dialogue partner, both dialoguing with the left and the right and being able to be seen as expert and not just I don't want to say that, but be seen as an expert that knew the fields that they came from and the voices they represented. So there's a long history of collaboration, but what we're seeing in Denmark is that some of the pressures of civil society that is going on around the world and also in Europe, we are also slowly seeing creeping into Denmark, especially from the far right, as we've also heard, and also some questions being asked about funding scrutiny or how can funding and freedom of speech coexist. And these are some of the questions that we are having to answer now, and also then look inward and seeing, okay, why is it that these questions are being raised? Why is it that some politicians or are asking these questions of us? What can we do differently? So not just looking at the outside and saying, what can you do differently, but also looking inward and what can we do differently? What are the problems that we are not solving? What are the language that we are not speaking, since it's so easy to cut our funding or to scrutinize civil society or to blame civil society? And I think this is something that we are grappling with in Danish civil society right now. And so one of the things we are thinking about are what are the different roles we are playing. And of course there is a plethora of roles that we play, but maybe just to mention three. There's of course the watchdog role of when it's the state or other actors doing something that we think is wrong, and where are we not living up to the human rights and so on. So that's one role. Then there's the collaborator, where we can help solve issues and be innovative, as you were saying, Mohammed. And then there is the bridge builder that we also, somebody also mentioned up here, connecting between different actors and the citizens. And that is also a role of civil society. So, of course, that is not just a role that we can take if there's no space for it. So we need the enabled environment to be able to play these different roles. But we also need to understand and look at the current climate and the situation and the political reality, and seeing, are we using the right arguments then? Are we in line with the public? Do we have the right allies? And that is some of the things that we are asking ourselves right now in Denmark, looking at the role, building new alliances. And Jan, you also talked about the private sector. Is it just civil society that should be standing up for civil society? But what if we could get broader alliances, so we have other actors standing up for us and understanding and saying, yes, civil society is important and helping us fighting that fight. And then, of course, maybe looking at our communications, and we work on global issues and development cooperation in in Global Focus, and what is the current context of the geopolitical situation? How do we speak into that? How are we relevant? How do we keep our core values and principles, but how are we also creating solutions and understanding and speaking both to the public but also to the political scene, so to speak. So I will end there, but I just wanted to say at least that we are thinking of how are we willing to look inward and trying to be more innovative and renewing our own ways and methods of working, and especially coming maybe from a situation where we have taken a lot for granted, and right now we are seeing maybe not a huge shift yet, but some alarm bells are ringing in Denmark, and we are looking to the rest of the world and seeing what can we learn from Jan, what can we learn from all the different colleagues around the world of civil society organizations, and these are some of the things that we have identified.
Thank you very much. I think we had a rich discussion, and now let's open the floor to the audience for any questions, clarification, or if you want to raise. If you please briefly introduce yourself with your name, organization, and conscious of time, please keep your intervention short and focused. And if you are addressing the question to one speaker, please name the speaker as well. Let's take a couple of, okay. Let's start with my colleague here. Do we have a microphone? I don't know if anyone uses the translation. That's why. If it is using the translation, then I think the microphone should be used. Okay. Okay. You can speak. There is no one here having the need for the translation at the moment.
So, hello everyone. This is Maryam Al-Awaisi. I'm from Jordan. I'm working with a Swiss organization called TDH. I'm working with Syrian refugees in the camp. And I'm currently representing Lindh Foundation as the one alumni for one of its programs. My question is for Mr. Mohammed Hafez. You just mentioned that there is a space between Israel and Palestine. So as someone who's originally Palestinian, I just want to mention that there is no space between occupation and the occupied. When we are talking about something related to human rights violation, injustice, it's not a space. Please understand the context we are coming from and understand the genocide that's happening the last 2 years in Gaza.
I will take another question, and then if you want to comment. And I hear another question here, and.
My name is Nadia. I'm from Fokus Communications. It's a private company that deals with communications, but we have been engaged in a lot with civil society. And something that has also been in our conversations with NGOs and civil societies here in civil organizations here in Cyprus is that it seems that there is a lot of fragmentation of the civil society, particularly in Cyprus. So I just want to take it from where you have all mentioned about, obviously there is a shift of discussion of the public dialogue from civil rights to security. But there's also a lot of there's also a shift or a setback in terms of goals for the climate change. So all these combined creates a context whereby civil society organizations do have an issue in terms of securing funding. And I would also like to add, I didn't hear it, I'm sorry if you mentioned it, the issue with the UN. So there seems to be, thank you. There seems to be a bit of a setback with in terms of rule of law, international law of UN, of the UN's role in the world. So My question is, if you'd like to elaborate, to all of you, if you'd like to elaborate a little bit more about maybe in globally or even in the European context, if there is a possibility for the civil society organizations to be able to push back at this trend by coming together or by creating a more of a federal, if I may use the word, or a global network of organizations.
Thank you. I will take another question, and then I will come back for the second round so that we don't...
Good morning, everybody. Leni Karaoli from Civil Society Advocates. Too many things from the new MMF to omnibus or deregulation, because from civil society actors, it's a deregulation that we see, not omnibus. I mean, what do we have to ask ourselves? And when I say ourselves, it's citizens, national governments, and European Union is what kind of democracy do we want? And democracy is participation. And participation, it's the right of assembly, it's the right of free speech and association. And then what kind of NGOs do we want? And civil societies organizations do we want? Do we want free civil society organizations? So we can, have all these nice freedoms and rights? If we don't want free civil society, then tell us so. And then to use horizontally AML and the money laundering regulation, so there is something coming from the European Union or internationally, and then from national governments, and we're in the middle. And if one NGO or one civil society organization whom they know, the governments know, authorities know who are not performing or who are bending or, fragmenting the law, they know it. But then all organizations horizontally are blamed. And we have to prove that we are not the elephants in the room. I will stay here.
Yes. Thank you very much for this. I would like to see Mohammed, if you want to respond. I would like to ask you to be briefly so we can have the opportunity for another quick round.
Very fast one. Thank you very much, Mariam. We have been always proud of the work that you have been doing in the framework of the Young Civil Society Leaders. It is obviously you've misinterpreted my intervention. This is a context. This is the reality that I am operating in. We have 43 countries who are members of the UFM, and I cannot do but try to facilitate solution for peace. This is the thing that I feel that I'm obliged to feel, to do. And believe me, what I'm telling you here is something that I have witnessed, because there is this head of network in Israel, and he reported an iftar in Ramadan where there were Palestinians. I mean, I'm not here saying I'm supporting that, of course not, but I'm talking, you don't want to be in my position in this context. Yes. You don't want to work in this harsh reality that I'm working in, but I am one with hope and believe that the right should return to those who are deserve it. But
thank you, Mohammed. I understand the difficult times, and our focus should be on our values of dialogue and peace. And I will move and I will try to merge the two points raised by the other two people questions about what else can we do in terms of networking among ourselves so that we can take all these issues to a higher level, and what civil society and what democracy do we want. Would you like to go?
I can at least start it, and then Carlotta will join in as well. I think one thing I was thinking of when one of the questions were asked was, the diversity of civil society is very important. So not looking at it as fragmentation necessarily, but seeing we need a diverse and vibrant civil society that can bring different voices and bring different perspective. And then what at least I see civic space and the fight for civic space is about is that we then stand together and help each other having the space to raise those voices. So that's where the importance of us coming together also as civil society is that we fight for all of us for the rights of taking different positions, but having that political access, having voices being able to be heard. And then I also just wanted to comment on the UN and saying, yes, I think if you go to New York and hopefully also Geneva, I know less about that, there are civil society organizations working together. But back during Corona, Global Fokus was part of a collaboration of civil society organizations that made a campaign that is called Unmute Civil Society. And it was that we were being pushed out once things moved online. Civil society didn't have the same access. So Unmute Civil Society was a campaign to keep civil society's voice in the UN system. And it is, of course, continued after Corona, and now it will be even more relevant as we're looking into the UN reforms. So just to say a little commercial for you, for Unmute Civil Society, if you are interested in the UN level, that would be somewhere to start and look.
Thank you. Carlotta, do you want to say something about these two issues, or Jan? Yes.
Yes, I wanted to maybe come back on the funding that was raised. So to say that, of course, there are some perspective because, for example, in terms of the EU funding, for instance, the program Agora EU has been strongly increased. Also the parliament, we are waiting for the vote in plenary, but at least in budget committee, they have further increased it, and it's really looking at civil society. There are also the discussion about the digital fines that might go the fines to digital platforms that might go to support also this. But there is also the whole issue about how we can work to change a bit the agenda of other funders, to also somehow replace some of the funding that was there before, and to engage other funders to work more on democracy, like philanthropy, like lotteries, like others like that. And so we are trying also to work on that, but it's also necessary to work all together and not in competition, and this is the challenges that we have at all the levels. And just on the money laundering that was raised before, of course, I agree that there is a need to have risk-based policies and to work and to be proportionate, but we also know that we have a misuse because of the political situation of this legislation to also, somehow repress civil society, but it's definitely something that, and also dialogue with the relevant actors and authorities, it's really important.
Well, thank you very much. I am really sorry that we could not take more questions, but I would like to encourage you during the coffee breaks to deepen our discussion and exchange other views. I would like firstly to thank our panelists for joining us today. And today's discussion highlights exactly what we are seeing and what we can do. We are here to organize our democracies, allocate resources. The challenge is here, but we have heard some good examples and some ideas to strengthen it. Please join me to thanking our excellent speakers and moving on. Thank you very much.